Morgen with Ner Shabbos. Shabbos name is Barchen side the Yontif of Pesach Sheni, and Medrash says that the all the Yom Tovim in the summer, every month has a Yontif. Obviously, we're missing a few, and that's because of Nechat Einu, so Mashlam, Tishrei, 3 Yom Tovim, more. And the Yontif of Iyar says a Moyed is Pesach Sheni, so the din of a Yontif. And then there's and then we have, of course, Yom Godel V'Adela, the great day of Lagleina. So Baruch Hashem, big Shabbos. So we're going to do Halacha and Hilchos Sechirus. Perik Beis Halacha Gimel says, Rambam writes a chiddush that he sort of assumes on his own. That is, we know there's a din of shemim. Somebody gives somebody something to guard. So there are various levels of shmira: shemer chinam, shemer sachar, shoyel, seicher. They say sachar is called. So there are various levels of shemer. Amongst the various levels of shemer, there's different degrees of responsibility. Shemer chinam, who is the most lenient of shemer, his responsibility will be only on if he is negligent. A shemer sachar, his degree of responsibility is heightened, and even if it's stolen or it's lost, he's responsible. Shale goes even more. Continue. So there's a certain chiddush, and the Rambam is going to inject and say to him it's not a chiddush, it's a simple, obvious thing. That's what he says. That what's this idea of pshia, negligence, that a shemer chinam is chayiv, and the Rambam says that this pshia is not something special for shemer. And what's his proof? Where is it relevant? There are certain things that even though you took on the obligation to guard, if you're challenged, you claim that it got lost, or let's say a shemer chinam. If he, they claim if he was pesheya, if something was stolen from he would have to swear, right? And if something was stolen from him, he has to swear. If he says Hashem Achinim says it was stolen, he'd have to swear. And but there are certain things he doesn't have to even swear. He just can claim. For instance, avodim, if he is a shemer on slaves, which we just finished learning. He's a shemer on shtarais, shemer kakois, property, real estate property, hegdish, all these places you don't have to swear. What happens if he is pesheya? So and on this game, you don't swear, you don't play. Okay, so what happens? What if he was pesheya? He doesn't have to swear because you don't swear on any of these things. שאם פושע השמר בעבודם כיצא חייב לשלם, שאיני פוטר, בעבודם כקויס ושטרס, אלא מדין גנבה וריידה ומסה. השמר חינם, or any shamer, will only have that exemption from swearing, and it'll only be relevant if he claims it was stolen. And have to swear. Yeah, it was stolen. And you don't have to swear. Or if he's a shemer sachar, and he claims that that was that was an illness, was an accident, you'd have to swear. And no, in these places you don't swear. But if the claim is Shia, there's nothing different than any of these things than anything else in the world. You are required to pay. Why? All these cases. So Hashem is not only that, he doesn't pay. If this happened, he would be chayiv v'gnei v'aveda in a normal case. Doesn't pay. Doesn't swear. Doesn't pay. But let's say he was negligent in any of these things. Chayiv l'shal is required to pay. Here the Rambam introduces a concept. Shekol ha'peisheya maziku. Every negligence is equal to being a mazik, a damager. You are a mazik. Ein hefrish, and there's no difference if somebody is mazik, medina mazik, karka, medina mazik, metaltalin. Whether somebody damages karka, somebody damages metaltalin, doesn't matter. Somebody goes into somebody's field and digs it up, or runs a car through it and destroys everything in the field. Of course he's alive. There's no such thing. Karka, who cares? Karka is a tour in Shvuas HaShemrim. Dinim of Shemrim. This is not the reading, the simple reading. This is not a Shemrim din. It's a mazik, regular mazik. We know that there's Arba of Mazikin. One of them is human beings being a mazik. This is a mazik. And the Rambam writes a line. V'din emes uzel mavinim. This is a true halacha to those who understand. So is it appropriate to judge. And then he brings and so my teachers taught Shahamaiser Karma L'Shemer. Somebody gives over, I have a vineyard, I have to go away, and I wonder why somebody to take care of it. Watch it. They marisas, they mishmiras chinam. You got to take care of it. That's part of the responsibility, is to make sure it doesn't deteriorate. Here's a chiddush. Chayiv, Kamisha, if somebody that. Chayiv is if you physically went and destroyed it. The chayin kol kiyotz is that chayiv al kolpon, doesn't matter what it is, a karka or anything else. So this sounds simple, but it's a chiddush that there's a new that you didn't do anything. Your chiyuv should be because of a shamer. Shamer be'etzem is part from these things, and yet you're chayiv. The Ravid does not like this idea, and there are a number of questions on it. Question number one, his question is, there is a halach that if I am working together with the owner, and the owner has put me in charge of certain things, but he is there together with me and he's responsible. He has a responsibility here, working together with me. These are all halachas in Hilchos Shmir that you're going to learn. He says, the Rambam says, the Ravid says, the halacha is that the Pshia b'Bailim, it's called, when the ball of Imai, you shalom, you don't pay. So how can you tell me every day? What I mean, if let's say I'm standing with, I'm a worker, and I'm working together with the Bailim, and I go and I throw a rock through the guy's window. Of course you're gonna pay. So why here not? Why suddenly? According to the Rambam, it's the exact same thing. That's one major question on the Rambam. How does he deal with Pshia B'Bayla? The Hagoyis Maimonides brings from Bali Tesus, and they argue. And they say, no, Shemachina does not pay for these things with Pshia. And they bring a very beautiful proof. The proof is that there was, the Gemara says, in Perek HaChevel, that there was a purse of tzedakah, a lot of stuff, money accumulated, that was given to and brought to Pumpadisa and kept and given over to Rav Yosef to guard. So Rav Yosef is a Shem Bechina. And I'm sorry, not Rav Yosef was the guard. Rav Yosef gave it to somebody to guard. And that person went and was B'Sheh. He took it, I guess. And he played a game of, not he didn't have to play a game, but he put it out on he left it in his car with the windows open, or whatever it was. And remember, he's a shamer, right? He was a shamer. And the Gemara says, this is money that belongs to Raniyim. And the Gemara says, sorry, the pasuk says that when you give somebody kelim lishmer. Now, why was this guy given the money to keep? No, l'chalek laniyim. It was given to give it out to poor people. So therefore, you're not chayiv amshiyah. But who cares? You're not chayiv because of lishmer. But you're a pesheya maziku. Call up pesheya maziku. So he's a mazik. How does this solve the problem? Now, the Rambam in Hilchis She'ela Upikodin, Perik Hey Aloha Aleph, says this, brings this halacha. And he says, Mi Shehefkidu Etzle Moish Lanim. Oh, he shall pidyon shuyu. We're trying to get a guy out of prison who's sitting in a dungeon. Upasha Bahem. And he was Pesheya, and because of that it was stolen. Potur. Shenema Lishma v'leilachalek lanim. As it says, you got to guard it. It's made for guarding, not because his intent was to take it and give it out. And then he adds another line. Varehu mamin shein le'tevim. And it's mamin shein le'tevim. Now, generally, that would be a good end. That would be in itself a good svara. Who is he going to pay this money to? As Rashi in Baba Kama says, on this Gemara, Lishmar, Nevkide Etzle Lishmar, Chayev B'Pshir, V'Leikish of Kide Etzle Amanasla Abid, Amanasla Chalik Kamin. One of the cases of Amanasla Abid, I'm not going to get into that. It's a story for itself. But Amanasla Chalik Laniyim, the Leikarina Be Lishmar. It's not called Lishmar. Why? Because once the guy told him, give it out, I'm gone. I'm out of the picture. Now, so you have no obligation to me. Suloi the Mafkinin. So who is now the case with? Uman Katova. Who's now demanding it? Only the Aniyim. Aniyim loy motzu tavit. Aniyim are not capable because they're mom and Shane Leitavim, because each of them tells them, sorry, I wasn't going to give it to you. I was going to give it to somebody else. That's good in Rashi, and that's what can push it into the Rambam. But the Rambam doesn't say that. It says, sounds like one thing. Not like two separate people we're talking about. Okay. So we have the Ravid, Skasha, Shia B'Baylam. Why would it be Potter? We have that guy's Maimon is a story of Tzedakah. And then we have another couple of issues that we should resolve. And we have the connection of Lishmer Leilachalik Aniyim and Arehu Mamin Shein L'Tayim. Make up your mind. Is there a Swara? Is it a Taina? I mean, again, you could read it like Rashi, but it doesn't fit the way Rambam writes. It should have been Lishmer Leilachalik Aniyim. V'gam Mamin Shein L'Tayim. It's two separate things. It sounds like it's one thing. But there are two other issues. There is such a thing called Hegdish and such a thing called Tzedakah. Ma'asanim is Tzedakah. So the halacha is by Hegdish, the Rambam Paskin, the those things are all Hashemer, Apeshei, Chayim. And Ma'asanim, he says, a pattern. And Tzedakah and Hegdish are all in the same league, as we know. There's a lot of areas where they're similar. It's a question that's asked in the Acharonim. To note, just interesting that in the Rambam, when he brings the cases, he brings Avodim, Kakois, Shtaris, he doesn't mention Hegdish, but it's hard to believe that he means to exclude Hegdish. At least the assumption is that he doesn't mean that. I don't know why he excludes it. That needs a beer, but the fact is, then there's an interesting piece of Gemara. The beginning of Bava Kama, we start off, everybody knows, the whole world will ask anybody, Arba Avos Nazik, and there's 4 Avos Nazik. But a little further, the Gemara adds a lot more. And then there's Tani Rabbeishia. And Abdalid, Shloisha Osa Avos Nazik. There are 13 Avos Nazik. One of them is Shem Echinam. Calls a Shem Echinam an Av Nazik. So the Achreinim asks, how come? If Shem Echinam is Pshia, that's what he's chayav on, and Pshia is Mazik B'yadayim, so he's just like a regular person, Adam HaMazik. He's only chayav as a regular Adam HaMazik. So what's the Shem Echinam aspect in Avos Nazik? It's just it's another case of Adam HaMazik. I mean, we're not giving all kinds of cases that a person can be a mazik. Those are the questions that exist. The Shach in Siman Samach Vov gives us an opening to this sugi. And he says, writes on the Rambam, Dvarim Vadai Ruyin L'misha Omram L'vinei Das. The Rambam says that it's for those who understand. This is the. So he says, what it says, Kol HaPeshei Maziku. What's the word? That logically, a guy is negligent. He deserves to pay. It's much less svara. This is what he said. Pshia b'bayla, and which is the taina that many Rishonim ask. And so he says these are the key words of the Shach, which need be, but that's what he says. The pshita the ein kavanas haram the b'shei mazik mamish. Of course, a b'shei is not a real mazik, but he's just like a mazik, which logically is chayiv without a posuk. If so, where do we draw the line between shmir and b'baylev is potter from shir, and avodim kakois shtaris is chayiv? So he says, because avodim and kakois, as we learn out tonight, in a whole process of klal prat, it's not clear in the Torah. So he says, what the Torah is saying, they don't have the chiyuv of shemrim. Okay, but let's use the logic, the chayiv for pshia, because pshia is also like a masik. But pshia b'bayla, the Torah writes clearly, ba'olav imay lo yishal, meaning anything in any way. He's out. He's not a shemer. It has nothing to do with shmir. So when ba'olav imay, he's not a shemer. He's like a regular person. When he has his owner together with him working, he's not no shaykhis. If there's an obligation to them, to each other, nothing to do with it. So in other words, to him, there's two. There's when the Torah excludes somebody from paying, which is those things. Okay, so when it comes to pshia, there's a logic that he should play without a pasuk. But then there's a total exemption from being a shemer. And therefore, he's just like a regular person. A regular person is not going to pay from Shia. Not going to end up paying. Not going to be chayiv from Shia. So at least we answered, at least he answers, according to him, the Ravid's question, Shia and Maila. It'll also answer why it's a of if Neyatzmai. Because you wouldn't be chayiv without it. But it still leaves what needs to be understood. So why are you chayiv? Why are you not chayiv? You're not chayiv because it's the Torah says you're not chayiv. Okay, so he says the eina mazik b'sheya mamish. That's clear. It's only k'moy mazik, and yet minasvara you're chayiv. What was going on over there? It's brought down b'shem Reb Chaim. Also, similar idea that the Rambam, when he says kol abshei maziku, of course it's not mazik. You're not chayiv b'shia. You can tell me you're chayiv in Shemayim. You can tell me a lot of types, but you can't be chayiv. It's not a mazik. Mazik means mazik b'yadayim. The Rambam's losh kim mazik b'yadayim. But midine hashemrim, there are many parts of shemrim, but Shia, the Torah was machadish that in Shia, in a shemer has a nuchiv of Shia. So even though avodah mekakois, there's a ptur that he's not chayiv, but he's still a shemer. Once you're shemer, he has this nuchiv of Shia. In other words, it's considered a mazik for shmira. And therefore, as long as he's under the guise of being a shemer, you're mechayev for mazik. But ba'olav imai, he's not a shemer at all. The others see similar l'shein is similar ideas, and that it's a din. It's not there's a din of makabei mishamena, which is a din of odam mazik. And then there's a din of shemer, which is a new type of mazik. Problem is the lashon Rambam, and I think it's true what they're saying, and I think it's maybe what we're saying. We're going to explain, but I just want to fit it into the words of the Rambam. Rambam says shekol apashei maziku, and he says chayiv k'misha hifsa b'yadayim. I don't see the shemer aspect so much, unless you tweak it a little bit and understand the shemer aspect a little different. Perhaps there's an umbrella, a mazik. A mazik is a person who is responsible for damaging somebody else's thing. There are many levels of mazik. There's groma b'nizak. Is he a mazik? Of course, but not to the degree of having to pay b'day adam. He's only chayav b'day shemayim. There's garmi, which opens up a whole other thing. There are various dargas of mazik. The Mishnah Bava Kama, Cherish, Sheiter, Cotton, Big Yosam, Ra, Chayru, B'hem, Chayim, Shalachem. Are they not mazikim? They just not, they don't pay. There are mazikim who, of course, you're considered a mazik, but you're not considered a mazik to pay. That's the shayla. So, what it says in Avodah Mishtaris Kakois, that this mazik is not mechuyev to pay. What's the worth of shemer? A shemer means I took on myself a responsibility. I took on a responsibility. So I took on the responsibility. Now this mazik now becomes a paying mazik. That was till now I was a mazik. The Torah said you're a mazik without pay. You're not you're a mazik. We don't pay for regular negligence. But I said I am taking on that responsibility. That's the deal I made with the mafkid, the guy who gave it to me. Oh, so that's what the shach means. That it's not. He's not a mazik. He's a mazik. He's just not a mazik of paying. So he says that's what the Shach says. Kol ikar ptur lemitzat shein mazik. He's not a chroi to pay. And that could be what the Shach means. So now we understand what the Shach is separating avodah mishtaras kakos. Not long the shivur abzer. He's not a mazik. The word is that by avodah mishtaras kakos, the Torah said you don't have to pay. You're not required. Well, good. But I'm a mazik. I'm a mazik that took a responsibility. Now, of course, you have to pay. Kum de Reiven schreit, Pshia b'Bailim, zog de Shach. Pshia b'Bailim, you're not, that's the word to the Shach. I never took responsibility, because the Bailim I don't take responsibility. Inish ba'alma. I'm like a regular person. Doesn't mean I lost my mazik. No, I'm a mazik without pay, because I never took responsibility with the Bailim around. Pshia b'Bailim is a mute in my Kabbalah's Shmirah. My Kabbalah's Achrayus. Oh, so now we can answer why it's considered another mazik. True, it's part of other mazik, but it's of other mazik that has a new gather of chiyuv tashlumin, which comes not through the tashlumin, comes not just through his mazik, but through his taking on the Kabbalah of the mazik. I am responsible for this mazik to pay. Just like we find that there's an Adam Dahazik Adam Dahazik Share. The Gemara gives two types of Adam. And why are they different? They're different in the way they pay. Here also, there's an Adam Hamazik that doesn't pay for Shia. And then there's an Adam Hamazik that pays some Shia. So now we can understand perhaps the case of tzedakah. Tzedakah, we say lishmer v'leil chalak lani, and it's a mute in the shmir. Why? So Rashi says it because I don't have any responsibility to anybody. That's not the way Rashi. I have no responsibility to the mafkid, because the mafkid gave it over to me to give out, not to the watch. So I never took on a chiyuv shmira. I never took on a responsibility of watching it. I have responsibility to get rid of it. So there's no Kabbalah Sechirus. But the question is two things. What's the difference between that and Hegdish? And what does the Rambam combine the two things of Lishmer v'leil chalak aniyim and Arei Mamash Ein L'Tev? So perhaps the same idea. When you're talking about Hegdish, I'm achrei to the, I'm a shamer for Hegdish. So Hegdish is just a chesaron in some Gzeres HaKosu that I don't have to swear, but I took on responsibility to Hegdish. Tzedakah, I'm not responsible to anybody. And ulai, that's the word to the Rambam. Now, it is a little chiddush to say that the Rambam's words "Mamash Ein L'Tev" mean what I say. Well, what we're going to say, but perhaps that fits very well with this approach. Shenamar lishmer v'leil chalak laniyim v'arehu mamash ein l'tev, meaning that there is no one here that I am responsible to. The Ein L'Tevim is not the usual Ein L'Tevim, and therefore, like Rashi says, is Gzeres HaKosu. That if my purpose in Shemira is to get rid of it, I am not responsible. I don't have a responsibility to anybody. Responsibility means I am holding it for somebody specific, holding it. Giving it away means I'm not holding it for anybody. I haven't taken responsibility. There's no relationship of responsibility that I can say, you took on responsibility to this guy, and therefore now your act of negligence becomes a mazik. Oh, so since that's the case, very good. So the Rambam says that if you gave it to me l'chalak laniyim, I'm not, and so the guy before me, no shaykhis. The guy gave it to me. He's gone. He's out of the picture. I never took any responsibility for that. And the aniyim, there is nobody that I took responsibility to because there ain't like Tevim. That means there is no act of Kabbalah Sachrayis. Kabbalah Sachrayis is to somebody, and therefore it doesn't create a mazik. It doesn't create a paying mazik of Shia. In other words, Shia is a mazik. It's got to become a paying mazik. The Kabbalah Sachrayis makes it a paying mazik. Just to note that in that Gemara of Lishma v'loy l'chal ganim, we mentioned earlier, one of the things you learn out is Lishma v'loy l'abed. Means a guy takes on responsibility. The guy tells me, here's my iPhone. Give an example. I want you to go and throw it into the ocean. I guess he got fed up with his service. So the shaila, it's so hard to understand. What's the havamina? I mean, you should be chayiv for what? What should be chayiv for? But I just want to bring out is that this lishmer v'loy. I don't want to get into that because I told you it's a discussion of its own. But it's not just stem up. It's telling you that's not called Kabbalah Sachrayis. Just like there, it doesn't mean Kabbalah Sachrayis because I was told that it's not a ptur because you told me to do it because that wouldn't be a ptur as the Gemara there talks about it. It's just not a Kabbalah Sachrayis. That's all. I didn't take responsibility for this, and that's why there is no chiyuv. So, in other words, it could be this is what everybody means when they say it's a din and shmir, but I didn't see any clarity in it. So, it's dvar pshutim that that's what they mean. But I think this gives it a much clearer understanding that there is a mazik called shia. No shaila, you're a mazik. However, just like there are certain mazikim, not all mazikim are chayiv. Okay, this is a mazik you're not chayiv, and that's what the chiddush here is. That when you're a shamer, you became a mazik that's chayiv for the one reason because you took on responsibility for this mazik. In other words, the mazik that you were brought to the base because he had no responsibility. Now you have responsibility. I have responsibility. That's what I would suggest, perhaps as an understanding of the sugya. And Hatzloch Rabbah, have a great Shabbos, and seid gesund und stark.